Good evening. We begin tonight's broadcast with a major escalation in East Asia. After months of mounting tension, China has launched a full-scale military campaign against Taiwan, citing national sovereignty and foreign interference. The United Nations Security Council has called an emergency session, and global financial markets have plunged as world leaders scramble for diplomatic solutions. The situation intensified as Chinese naval forces blockaded key Taiwanese ports while airborne divisions landed near Taipei. Casualties are unconfirmed, but early reports indicate heavy fighting throughout the western coastline. Military analysts are now warning that the conflict could have spillover effects beyond Asia. NATO forces in the Pacific are on high alert, and North American defense protocols have quietly shifted into readiness mode.
This is an emergency alert issued by the Government of Canada and the Department of National Defence. At 8:50 MDT, NORAD surveillance detected multiple Chinese naval vessels operating within proximity of Canada's Pacific coastline. The vessels were identified as guided missile destroyers and surveillance frigates belonging to the People's Liberation Army Navy. The ships are currently maintaining a course parallel to Canadian territorial waters near British Columbia. While no hostile actions have been reported, their presence has prompted a Level 3 maritime security advisory. All civilian vessels operating in the region are advised to maintain distance and report unusual activity to the Canadian Coast Guard. Canadian Armed Forces have deployed HMCS Ottawa and HMCS Vancouver to monitor the situation. Aerial reconnaissance and satellite tracking are ongoing. The Prime Minister is expected to address the nation within the hour. This concludes the emergency alert. Further updates will be provided as the situation develops. Stay safe and remain vigilant. Please stand by for a message from Mark Carney. My fellow Canadians, today I speak to you not only as your Prime Minister, but as a steward of our sovereignty and safety. Early this morning, NORAD confirmed the presence of multiple Chinese naval vessels operating near our Pacific coastline. While these ships remain outside our territorial waters, their proximity is unprecedented and deeply concerning. Let me be clear, Canada will not be intimidated. Our armed forces have mobilized to monitor and protect our maritime borders. I have spoken with our allies in NATO and the Indo-Pacific region. We are united in our commitment to uphold international law and defend democratic values. I urge all Canadians to remain calm, vigilant, and informed. We are activating emergency protocols and increasing surveillance across key infrastructure. Our response will be measured, firm, and resolute. Canada stands for peace, but we will never compromise our security.
Good evening. This is your top story update. Today, we're bringing you the latest headlines from around the world. From breaking developments in global politics to updates on the economy and technology, we'll cover the stories that matter most. We begin tonight with breaking developments off Canada's Pacific coast. Chinese naval vessels have been spotted operating in close proximity to Canadian territorial waters, prompting a swift response from Ottawa and its NATO allies. NORAD surveillance confirmed the presence of multiple warships, including guided missile destroyers and surveillance frigates, maintaining a parallel course near British Columbia. While no hostile actions have been reported, the maneuver is being described by officials as a strategically provocative. Her Majesty's Canadian ship Ottawa and Her Majesty's Canadian ship Vancouver have been deployed to shadow the foreign vessels. The Prime Minister has addressed the nation, assuring Canadians that sovereignty will be defended. In Brussels, NATO leaders convened an emergency summit earlier today. Secretary General Mark Rutte stated, "An incursion near one member's borders is a concern for all." NATO has activated joint maritime patrols and cyber defense protocols in support of Canada. Citizens are urged to avoid unnecessary maritime travel and monitor official updates. The situation remains fluid, and further developments are expected overnight.
This is an emergency alert issued by Public Safety Canada and local law enforcement agencies. At 18:45 MDT, multiple reports confirmed that large-scale riots have broken out in downtown Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton. The unrest appears to be linked to recent geopolitical tensions and misinformation circulating on social media. Protesters have clashed with police, resulting in property damage, injuries, and disruption of public services. Emergency responders are on the scene, and curfews are being enacted in affected zones. The situation is volatile and evolving rapidly. Public safety instructions. Avoid all travel to downtown areas of affected cities. Shelter in place if you are near active riot zones. Do not engage with crowds or attempt to record events. Follow instructions from law enforcement and emergency personnel. Monitor official news channels and emergency broadcasts for updates. Government response. Riot control units have been deployed. Hospitals and emergency services are operating under surge protocols. The Prime Minister is expected to address the nation shortly. End of message. This concludes the emergency alert. Further updates will be issued as the situation develops. Stay safe, stay informed, and remain indoors if advised.
Good evening. Our top story tonight. Rising tensions in the Pacific Northwest as Chinese naval vessels have been observed operating near Canadian territorial waters. The development has sparked international concern and prompted a swift response from NATO and Canadian authorities. We go to Vancouver, where Bill is. Net.
Thanks, Rachel. The Royal Canadian Navy has deployed multiple ships to monitor the Chinese fleet, which includes guided missile destroyers and surveillance frigates. While the vessels remain outside Canada's territorial boundary, their presence is being described as strategically provocative by defense analysts.
NATO has activated joint maritime patrols and cyber defense protocols. The United States and Australia have expressed solidarity with Canada. Beijing has yet to issue an official statement, though state media claims the maneuvers are routine. Markets have responded with volatility. Defense stocks are surging, while energy and shipping sectors brace for potential disruptions. The United Nations Security Council is expected to convene an emergency session within the next 48 hours. The Prime Minister has said, Canada will not be intimidated, our sovereignty is non-negotiable, and our allies stand with us. We urge calm, but we are prepared for any eventuality.
This is a national emergency message issued by the Government of Canada in coordination with NORAD and NATO Command. At 6:30 MDT, Chinese military forces launched coordinated amphibious and aerial assaults on strategic locations along Canada's Pacific coastline. This marks an unprecedented act of aggression and a violation of international law. Initial reports confirm landings near Prince Rupert, Vancouver Island, and coastal military installations. Canadian armed forces are actively engaging hostile units. Airspace over British Columbia has been restricted, and all civilian flights are grounded until further notice. Government response. The Prime Minister has declared a national state of emergency. NATO has invoked Article 5, initiating full Allied military support. Emergency shelters and evacuation protocols are being activated in affected regions. Public safety instructions. Shelter in place unless instructed otherwise by local authorities. Avoid all travel near coastal zones and urban centers under alert. Do not attempt to engage or approach military personnel or foreign forces. Monitor official broadcasts and emergency channels for real-time updates. End of message. This concludes the emergency alert. Further updates will follow as the situation develops. Stay alert, stay safe, and remain united. This is a national emergency message issued by the Government of Canada in coordination with NORAD and NATO Command. As of 8:15 MDT, Chinese military forces have expanded their operations beyond the Pacific coast and are now active in multiple urban centers across Canada. Confirmed reports indicate coordinated troop movements and aerial deployments in the following cities: Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Toronto, and Montreal. Armed clashes have been reported near key infrastructure sites, including transportation hubs, communication centers, and military installations. Government and Allied response. Canadian armed forces are engaging hostile units in multiple regions. NATO forces have begun deploying rapid response teams to support Canadian defense. Airspace over central and eastern Canada is now restricted. Emergency shelters and evacuation corridors are being activated nationwide. Public safety instructions. Shelter in place unless directed otherwise by local authorities. Avoid all travel near military zones, urban centers under alert, and critical infrastructure. Do not engage or approach foreign forces. Monitor official broadcasts and emergency channels for real-time updates. Report suspicious activity to local law enforcement or emergency services. End of message. This concludes the emergency alert. Further updates will follow as the situation develops. Stay alert, stay safe, and remain united.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a major development from Brussels, where NATO has officially mobilized its rapid response forces following escalating global tensions. This marks the largest coordinated military activation by the alliance since the Cold War. Secretary General Mark Rutte announced the deployment of over 90,000 troops across Europe and North America. The operation, codenamed Steadfast Defender, includes warships, fighter jets, drones, and armored vehicles. Rutte emphasized the need to shift to a wartime mindset, citing threats from both Russia and China. We go to Alice in Brussels. Alice.
Thank you, Rachel. This is a historic moment for NATO. The alliance is not only reinforcing its eastern flank, but also coordinating transatlantic logistics to ensure rapid deployment. The exercises are designed to simulate a near-peer conflict scenario, with emphasis on cyber defense, air superiority, and joint command operations.
The United States, United Kingdom, and Germany have pledged full support, with thousands of troops already en route. Sweden, though not yet a formal member, is participating in the drills. The United Nations Security Council is expected to convene within hours to address the growing crisis. As NATO mobilizes, the world watches with bated breath. The alliance's message is clear: unity, strength, and readiness in the face of rising threats. We will continue to bring you updates as this story develops.
His is a national emergency message issued by the United States Department of Homeland Security in coordination with NORAD, NATO Command, and the Government of Canada. At 7:30 MDT, coordinated military assaults were launched by foreign forces from China, Russia, and North Korea against strategic targets across the continental United States and Canadian territory. Confirmed reports indicate amphibious landings along the U.S. West Coast, aerial incursions over Alaska and the Midwest, and cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure nationwide. Canadian cities already under siege are experiencing renewed offensives, with foreign forces advancing toward joint U.S. Canadian defense zones. Government response. The President of the United States has declared a national wartime emergency. Martial law is now in effect in all border states and coastal regions. NATO has activated full-scale defense operations under Article 5. U.S. armed forces are engaging hostile units across multiple fronts. Emergency shelters and evacuation corridors are being activated nationwide. Public safety instructions. Shelter in place unless directed otherwise by emergency personnel. Avoid all travel near military zones, urban centers under alert, and critical infrastructure. Do not engage or approach foreign forces. Follow instructions from law enforcement and emergency responders. Monitor official broadcasts and emergency channels for real-time updates. Report suspicious activity to local authorities or the FBI tip line. End of message. This concludes the emergency alert. Further updates will follow as the situation develops. Stay alert, stay safe, and remain united.
Good evening. We begin tonight with an unprecedented crisis unfolding across North America. Coordinated military invasions by China, Russia, and North Korea have struck both the United States and Canada, triggering a global emergency and full-scale mobilization by NATO.
The U.S. Capitol is under lockdown as foreign forces advance through key border states. Martial law has been declared in multiple regions, and the Pentagon has confirmed active combat operations in California, Alaska, and the Midwest. President James Holloway has addressed the nation, calling the invasion a direct assault on democracy and freedom.
In Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney has invoked the National Mobilization Act. Cities including Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal are experiencing heavy fighting. NATO reinforcements have begun arriving, with British and French troops landing in Halifax and Quebec City.
NATO has activated Article 5, deploying forces across North America. Japan and South Korea have declared war on North Korea and China. Australia and the UK have committed naval and air support. UN peacekeeping forces are preparing humanitarian corridors. As the world watches the largest conflict of the 21st century unfold, leaders call for unity and resilience. BBC News will continue to provide live updates as this historic crisis develops.
EAS is a global emergency message issued by the United Nations Security Council in coordination with NATO, allied governments, and international peacekeeping forces. As of 12 o'clock UTC, a multilateral ceasefire agreement has been signed by all major belligerents involved in the global conflict. Hostilities are to cease immediately across all theaters of war. The ceasefire follows intensive diplomatic negotiations and humanitarian appeals. All military units are ordered to stand down. Peacekeeping forces will begin deployment to stabilize affected regions and oversee disarmament protocols. Key provisions of the ceasefire agreement: immediate cessation of armed conflict worldwide. Establishment of demilitarized zones monitored by UN observers. Humanitarian corridors activated for displaced civilians. International Tribunal to investigate war crimes and reconciliation efforts. Global summit scheduled to draft a new peace charter and security framework. UN Secretary-General Statement, excerpt. Today, humanity chooses peace. The cost of war has been unbearable. Let this be the moment we turn from destruction to unity, from fear to hope. The world must rebuild not just cities, but trust. Public safety instructions. Remain indoors until local authorities confirm safety. Cooperate with peacekeeping personnel and emergency responders. Avoid military zones and damaged infrastructure. Monitor official broadcasts for recovery and aid instructions. End of message. This concludes the final emergency alert of the global war. May peace prevail. Stay safe, stay united, and begin anew. I